The Total War Saga Thrones of Britannia is the latest historical Total War game. Gareth Evans and Mike Williams.
Correct.
Joining me, Jake Kulkowski, on a deep venture into this fantastic series. This is a slightly smaller title than the full-fat Total War games. It's the first of their new Saga series that they announced. They actually only announced this in November 2017, and here we are with a copy of the game. The official release is May the 3rd. 6-month turnaround, really, from announcing to the full game.
That's right.
The setting's 878 AD on the British Isles, and the Viking invasion following the death of Ragnar Lodbrok. If you want a key term for Wikipedia search, it's the Great Heathen Army. So, we've been playing it. Thanks very much to Creative Assembly for sending us a review copy. And in this video, we're going to be looking at the changes. If you're a Total War fan, you'll know that there's lots of different iterations of Total War games, and each one has its own little perks and quirks and changes, and they take things away in some games and they add new things in others. So we're going to focus on that. What's changed compared to, well, specifically the last couple of games that they've put out. So that's Total War Warhammer 1 and 2, Total War Attila and stuff like that.
Yeah, there is a lot of changes here. It does feel like the first time the series has ever gone backwards in any sense, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all. I just mean that they've looked at features that have been cut out and brought them back in, and they've taken them decisions that were popular to a lot of players in previous games, but they've gone because they didn't fit for the Warhammer universe or whatever, and they've kind of revisited things, which is pretty cool.
So there's been quite a few movements, and we'll talk about them now. So we'll focus for now on the sort of overview map and things like that, and then towards the end we'll focus a little bit more specifically on the battle system and how that's changed.
The good bit.
So one of the first major changes is character system changes to do with generals and governors and how that sort of thing works. So you can create generals or governors and you assign them perk points, which gives them passive traits, you level them up. You've got siege holdout times, you can increase their zeal or their combat prowess and stuff like that. But there's a little bit more stuff to manage. They've got influence, and you've got governors that
politics and intrigue.
That's right. Things like this I think is a new addition. Is that correct?
Well, it's kind of a lot more like Crusader Kings, isn't it, Gaz? It's like
the family tree kind of thing, and you've got to manage your family and the other nobles in your house and things. You got to keep them happy as well as utilize them to your benefit.
I said like Crusader Kings, but it's kind of a taste of it. It's kind of the essence of it. It's
Crusader Kings light, essentially.
That it kind of fits well because you've got the other things going on in this game. You've got the battles and stuff, so you don't want it to be. We've got Crusader Kings if you want that experience. This is kind of halfway there almost, I would say. And you do have to really keep an eye on it. I've been playing as Gwynedd on very hard difficulty, and that has kind of been a real headache. It's been something I've properly got to manage, and it feels fun and entertaining in that sense that you could be off gallivanting in kind of South Wales, as many people enjoy doing, but that's things might be happening back in the north. You've only got the resources to run one army because this is Gwynedd. We're not like the Viking invasion force, so you've got to manage your resources carefully. But there's just a civil war breaking out in North Wales because you're down south. And that is something that, I've constantly had to try to manage and try to balance. I've had to use the intrigue mechanics, which are lowering the opponent's influences. These are just characters in your kind of within your faction.
That's
right. You can lower their influence. You can kind of marry them to other people. You can do all these different things that cost money or cost something to try and keep them in line, but it doesn't always work out.
You can start civil wars by either losing the loyalty of your fellow noblemen or whatever, or any potential heirs to the throne, or by them becoming more influential than you. So a great tactic, if you don't want to assassinate him, you don't want to full out assassinate him, just marry him to somebody who's not very popular. That's something that I did.
Also the public order thing as well. If your public order is too low, in previous games, it used to. This is one of quite important change, if you ask me. In previous games, it would have to drop to 99 or 100 before a rebellion would kick off. This time, it's a constant chance if you're negative. So if you've got -8 public order, that means there's an 8% chance every turn that a civil war could break out, and you might risk it. You might think 10%. I can keep this tax level high enough because it's worth the risk for me. Or so you're making these decisions, which is a little bit better, a little bit more nuanced than it has been in the past.
Specifically within the tree, women are the greatest assets on this because you can use wives to gain favour. And Gaz, I believe you palmed off your sister to some Vikings.
Yeah, well, I needed to secure my northeast flank while I was going to go pillaging down south. And I thought, what better way than to sell my sister to the Vikings? And they wouldn't take her straight away. I had to offer them 500 gold, as well as my wife, because she wasn't good enough. So a chest of gold and my wife, and then Yeah, my flank is secure now. So it's a very intriguing way. It's diplomacy. It's brilliant. Yeah. It's a great addition.
I could never do that to my system.
The numbers are huge. It was
I'm a pragmatic guy.
I would take that vulnerable flank. Do you know what I mean?
Doing that improved Gaz's diplomatic relations. I think it was by 70. And other things are decreasing it by like 1 or 2. So that's a huge boost. So you can really use carefully planned weddings as great assets to your
reality TV.
So that's a little bit of a change there.
But this is the kind of conversation you just haven't been able to have about Total War in the past. I think. I mean, they've taken a lot of things away in this game, but this, in terms of interesting additions, the politics and intrigue is probably the biggest one. I think it's probably the best new addition to it.
But they've kept it simple enough for it to be accessible, right? It's not on the level of Crusader Kings, right? No. You don't have to learn too much about this. Once you get the gist of this, the whole point of it is that it's simple and it's easy to manage.
Yeah, it seems like pretty fair. Another big change, I guess, comes in the form of the tech tree. I think Creative Assembly actually in some YouTube video said it's less of a tree and more of a series of branches, and I actually am inclined to agree. So this time, the technology tree is unlocked in a bit of a different way than Warhammer 2 is the latest game that I played, and it's the latest one that they've released. So this one, for example, you've got your 2 major tables. You've got your military and you've got your civ. So let's talk about, I don't know, for example, melee units, right? To start unlocking melee unit upgrades in your tech tree, you need to hit like a prerequisite condition. Like you need to
recruit 10 swords.
That's it. You need to recruit 10 people first. So you have to do that before you can even start unlocking. So
and it unlocks naturally as well, like siege equipment as well. You've got to have built a certain amount of siege equipment, or the civic unlocks are the same thing, where you've got to have done something a few times before you can research it again in future, which seems more a natural way to do it. You can't research things that you've got no experience with.
So you start off with nothing to research, and then suddenly things start unlocking, and you get a little prompt that'll say, oh, by the way, you've been using a lot of spearmen, or you've recruited enough spearmen, or whatever, and so there you go, you can start improving your spearmen. So it does feel very natural.
Less like something that you can read online, a certain build, so you know straight away you want to start putting points into naval battles, because later on it's going to affect and stuff like that.
Or you can't just do nothing and just play defensively, not go out and do any wars or do anything and upgrade your tech.
Yeah,
you have to do things in order to upgrade your tech, which is a difference for people who just want to sit there and upgrade the tech before they engage in wars and shit. Your military won't be upgraded at all if you sit there doing fuck all. You have to do things.
Yeah, so that's how you unlock sort of stuff, these prerequisite things. As for the actual unlocks and stuff like that, I think they're pretty standard, aren't they? Like minus 10% recruitment cost and things like that.
Yeah.
So that's one change, and it seems to be, from what I've just gathered there, you guys are both kind of fond of that.
Yeah,
seems more natural.
Yeah, I do like it. I like the so they've done the kind of replacing lower tier units, which is cool. So you start off with Welsh levy spearmen, and then you recruit enough of them, and then you unlock the tech, and then you can just recruit Welsh spearmen and upgrade all the units you've got in your armies to a better class of unit, just by within the army management screen, which is cool.
So Welsh levy spearmen then become
obsolete,
and you can't recruit them anymore because you've got the Welsh spearmen now. You've been doing enough wars. You can do spearmen better now because you've used them a lot. So it's
tidies the whole thing.
It's a good system,
yeah. It keeps it nice and clean. That's what you were saying earlier, wasn't it, guys? You don't have to have all the really shit units when you can just get the better ones. So that's another big change, really. The skill tree, or the series of branches. War Fervor.
The skill series of branches.
Yeah. See, Creative Assembly, it doesn't have the same ring to it, does it? War Fervor is the next change. This is pretty cool. I think it was in an older game and they brought it back. Is that right, Mike? Something like that. This is a
War Fervor,
that
kind of thing's been before. So it's like appetite for war. So it stops you just declaring war on everyone and being an absolute loose cannon, because it'll affect your population. If you've got a massive border war going on, if a lot of your territory, as Gwynedd again, because that's what I'm playing. If you have a border war with Merce or Mercia, I've heard it pronounced differently. It's like something that you've got to manage. You can't just Mercia are annoying, so I'm going to attack them, and I'm also going to go south and send another army south and attack them. It's like something you've got to manage. You've got to keep an eye on it. You've got to build up that war further.
There's no real way of keeping your people happy. Like when you're not at war, they all want a war.
Yeah, exactly.
And then when you get in a war, they realise actually this is actually quite shit. We don't want one as much. So they can get bored of it, they can get fatigued. But this influence it has on the game is quite real.
Oh God, yeah.
like unit morale, starting unit morale every battle, influence, fame, public order, and even movement range can be reduced by up to like 20% if it's that bad, which is like, you know,
significant.
So it is something you want to be watching. If you're not familiar with this system, then you want to have a little look at this.
The War Fervor is one of these mechanics that all the factions have kind of a unique, at least one unique mechanic, but War Fervor affects all of them as far as I'm aware, right? It's something that every faction's got to keep an eye on.
That's right, yeah. We'll go on straight into that then. Another unique mechanic. So at the top you've got a bar, which is where your War Fervor is, and so Gaz and Mike, obviously being the true patriots you are, you've been playing as the Welsh, right? Because there's no other way to have it.
Who else would you be? I mean,
I would be the Vikings, because I knew that you guys were going to do it, and I wanted this video to be a little bit
You're a professional.
different. So that's it, yeah. Or a savage, however you want to look at it, okay? So heroism is the Welsh sort of specific trait. Is that right?
That's right.
And I guess the equivalent that Vikings had was tribute. So it's not a victory condition, as far as I know. It's like something that you upgrade through expeditions and raids and pretty much everything. It's basically
doing things.
Yeah, basically just tells you how good you do. And you get some very, very important, very useful perks. You can get like early game, just little things like minus 2% upkeep costs or minus 1 influence. When you get that all the way to 100, does heroism go up to 100 as well?
Yeah, it does, yeah.
So it goes up to 100, and you can get like, you know, minus 29% upkeep costs all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So some big changes, and that's gained through expeditions, raids, defenses.
The whole game, right, is this pulling you forward and encouraging you to do stuff like the skill tree, like we've already, or the skill set of branches. We've already discussed this. You're encouraged to do things. So heroism and these mechanics, that's what that is. You're encouraged to go out there and win battles, to conquer estates. You need more estates, and that's the heroism mechanic. The more things you own and the more things you've done, it improves, and then that is how you get these really valuable perks and benefits. But then the game, on the other hand, puts things in the way to kind of rein you in as well. So it's kind of a balancing act, and there's a lot of management involved, because if you recruit an army, you've got to keep an eye on the food surplus that you've got, because you can't just create a stack of 20 like you could quite easily in Warhammer. That you've got to be careful, because all your troops need to be fed and supplied, and there are all these mechanics in place that push you forward, but also put like strings and put barriers in front of you as well, because you need to manage. You want to go forward, but you've got to be careful how you do it, and that is quite a different experience to playing something like Warhammer, which seems a lot more arcadey in comparison.
Well, let me pose this question to you about the unit recruitment system. I'll just quickly run through what it is for those that are watching, and then I'll ask you how you guys have felt about it. But basically, the unit recruitment system is a little bit different than the previous games, isn't it? This time, if you're fortified or you're garrisoned somewhere, you just select a unit and you click it. You've recruited it. There we go. You don't have to wait a couple of turns or anything like that. As long as you've got the food and money to do it, you don't need specific buildings in a specific region. You just get the unit immediately. But you've only got a small band of men. You don't have the full unit, and they replenish themselves into a full unit of men over time. And you can, get different perks to reduce how many turns that's going to take. But that can be useful in a sticky situation, I suppose, if you need, a small amount of units fast. Yeah. And the only thing that really affects this sort of thing and how many turns is the manpower pool. It's basically your currency. So how you get a certain amount of money per turn, you also get a certain amount of manpower per turn, and it can be improved the same as any other resource by like upgrading certain buildings. How do you think that's affected your styles of play? Have you been focusing more on replenishment rates and stuff like that? Have you been enjoying getting instant units, or you're not like it?
I mean, for me, it's definitely an improvement, because micromanaging units and recruiting them, and then logistically getting them all into one big army, then moving them into where the war's happening, that takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of managing. So to not have to micromanage all of that, and you can just recruit armies, and they'll replenish even if you've lost like in a battle or whatever. They'll continue to replenish too. It takes out a lot of the boring stuff, like the tedious micromanagement, and it just allows you to focus your time on where you want your armies to be, and the battles as well. conquering things like that. So it's definitely, and it's something that's going to help me, especially in the late game, because that's one of the things that really puts me off towards the late game. I don't tend to finish a lot of campaigns because it just takes too long in between turns. And that's one of the other changes as well, is that they've taken, I don't know if you're going to touch on this later, but they've taken away the spies and all the other agents that are on the board, right? You don't have to manage all that anymore. You just focus on your settlements and your armies, and that's it. And it's going to take a lot less time to manage in the later game.
Yeah, lack of agents is something I'll touch. I'll talk about the big removals that I've noticed, at least anyway. But Mike, what's your view on the available units and the recruitment system?
Cool. It's cool. I like it. Thematically, I think it works because it's supposed to reflect mustering troops. So you would kind of issue a call for, hey guys, we need your spears, and then they wouldn't all come at once. You'd kind of gather them slowly over time. Whereas in previous games, you would just wait one turn, then boom, you've got a full fat 160 man unit, whatever, ready to go. So that's I do like that, and I like how they can be effective at half strength, and like you said earlier, they can get you out of a pinch. I think it works. I think it's a cool change. They constantly have been iterating and evolving recruitment in Total War, and this is a change that I am a fan of in particular, and I hope it stays, to be honest.
Let's talk about a couple of removed features that, again, thematically, I feel a lot of these make sense. So let's talk about what's not in a game that you might have seen in games like Attila and stuff like that. So Gaz just mentioned it a little bit earlier. No agents, so there's no priests to improve public order. Spies, lords and stuff like that, they're not in this game. No. You're just worrying about your stacks, so they're not in the game. There's no religion, which is again something I've heard some people online
not to the point that it affects your public order at the very least. I think there is a religion in there, and
you can have monasteries, defend them, and I think
there's no religion mechanic as such.
That's right, because in the real world, like the majority of the UK, as in the big majority,
quite unified, isn't it?
We're Christian, apart from the pagan invaders and the Picts in the northeast. So it would, if they did put this feature in, it wouldn't be very versatile anyway. It would be pagan and Christian. It wouldn't be as nuanced as perhaps they want a system like you could imagine from a Total War game to be. There's no Imperium. There's no edicts, which is actually a change that they are talking about. Like, it's not a removal. They're thinking that this is a change that they've boasted on YouTube, Creative Assembly being they in this case. So in a province, you've got your major settlements and you've got your minor settlements. In previous games, specifically Warhammer, again, I'm using that as a reference because it's the latest game, you could garrison up troops in your minor settlements and your major settlements in the province. And if you had all of these settlements, you could get an edict, which is like a little buff. So if you had a farming province, you could maybe have a buff to 10% food production. You can't do that in this game anymore. And to further that, minor settlements can no longer be garrisons. So if you've got 3 settlements in a province, only one of them, the major one, can have an army defending it. The others can just be taken immediately by an enemy army. How do you feel about this?
Unless you stick an army there yourself.
Unless you put an army outside there defending it. How do you feel about this no garrison of minor settlements?
Well, you went through a few things there, and I think they have changed that kind of thing a lot. They have changed a lot of the dynamic on the campaign map. The lack of agents and stuff is... I think, again, kind of thematically, it does kind of fit. There wouldn't have been that many like assassins and stuff floating around the place, I guess. I think a lot of these changes are kind of two things. The thematic changes, and also the fact that it's a smaller scale event in history and kind of and product as well. So I think the settlement thing is just a bit of streamlining that. Yes, it makes sense. And again, if I keep saying thematically, but territory would have changed hands a lot. Like people would just storm in. The Vikings would have kind of just burnt down raided some farmland or something, and you wouldn't necessarily have a standing garrison of 200 or 300 people there to repel them. They would there'd be nothing they could do about it. So they would just get. So I feel like it makes sense in the for the theme and the period and everything. It is a little bit annoying to see your settlements change hands very quickly with little you can do about it, and then you just have to go back up there and change them back and repair the buildings for whatever damage has been done there. It's a bit annoying from a gameplay point of view, but I understand it, and it kind of reminds me of the system they had. For anyone who's if you're wondering how it plays out, it feels a little bit like Empire, and I think Napoleon had it as well, where you've got in Empire Total War you had a big area with a central town or city, and then you had like a port, and you had a farmstead, and you had a mine literally on the map, and you could upgrade that separately to the main town or community. So it kind of feels a bit like that, a cross between that and what you've got in like the more modern ones like Rome 2.
Yeah, the minor settlements are acting literally here as farms or
just
mines.
a farm, just a mine.
Yeah, just resources to be taken.
Yeah, exactly. So thinking of them as a settlement compared to when you previously meant a minor settlement, they were towns in of themselves, so it would make sense that they'd have armed forces in there and places to accommodate forces. A farm probably wouldn't have the place.
A lot of these places are small. The major settlements are small villages in reality, really, but they just happen to have walls around them or something.
Exactly.
I think it's cool though. I think the fact that you could like just choke out a siege, you could burn all of their resources and have them and starve them out of a fortress in a very real way. You're in control of that. You're not just surrounding the town. You've taken out all their resources and then you surround the town. That's quite cool. Like tactically, that's like it opens up a new decision making type thing, I think.
Yeah, it does changes the way that you will approach your, because it's like another iteration Total War. It's another different way of approaching. Like if you want to go around just claiming as many resources as you want by having all these smaller minor settlements, and then you can do that, and that'll you can strategize towards doing that, or you can take a different
focus on the sieges and stuff. So whereas it takes away some aspects of the game, it adds more tactical opportunity and things like that. Bear in mind, this again isn't a full price game, so they have to trim features and I imagine trim some fat off to accommodate that price. And I think that what they've been trimming at, there's no real gripes with any of it.
Some of it doesn't feel like a trimming to me though, because if you think about it's a design decision. Like they've taken away the edicts, but now you've got governors, so you have to choose a governor to run the thing anyway, and that governor will have a certain set of perks or attributes. So the governor you choose, if you want somewhere to be making you more trade or to create more supplies or productivity for you or whatever, then you put a governor that does that, or a governor that's got like a better grasp of public order or something like that. So that's like a different thing to just selecting an edict. So that I feel is like more of a decision, and then
you can change hands, you can change estates, but they can have more than one estate. So if you have a governor with better public order, you could give all the places with bad public order to him, and he'll increase it.
You don't want too many overlapping features. So if you have an edict that does a job, and then you also put the governor in charge as well, you suddenly have got like overlapping numbers and stuff that you want to think about. So I can understand why it's not in there.
I guess that about covers it for the non-battle related changes. The battle related changes, there's far fewer of them that are worth mentioning, to be honest. Let's get this out of the way for those that are probably wondering. There's no naval battles, no true naval battles. There are armies that can move out into the water, just like Warhammer, and the Vikings obviously going to be great at that. You can have battles sort of at sea where it's just land troops jumping from boat to boat. They're like sieges now. There are landings, big Viking landings, which are as cinematic and as epic as you want them to be. They are genuinely just a fuck ton of boats landing on the beach and storming buildings that are being defended. So there's lots of great stuff like that, but no naval battles.
The boats aren't separate units like they were in previous entries. Boats just appear when you go into the water, essentially, so you don't have to manage that again. It's just something else that they've taken out that you have to manage.
So that's one battle change. I guess the formation changes are just like minor tweaks to formation, so you can't have infantry rows one man deep anymore, like what were we saying, spaghetti tactics or whatever it was.
It's something that I picked up off somebody else's YouTube video, but essentially you could cheese it, whereas you could have a buff like flanking buffs or whatever. If you just spread out your army front lines so wide, it wasn't realistic
like
at all.
One man deep.
Yeah, exactly. That you kind of essentially flanked the enemy, and they couldn't do anything about it because they couldn't bash through your line.
But you can't basically. Any infantry that's got a shield can do a shield wall, shield castle, move, which means they can't move, but they're incredibly defensive. And
they can even reflect cavalry, and it in fact forces cavalry to stop charging and engage, with their melee weapons,
which is fantastic.
I think there's some minor changes to battles that I honestly find really cool. I think the focus on infantry, which is again period specific. There wasn't that many horses. It wasn't like the Roman times where the heavy cavalry and stuff played a big role in skirmishes and stuff. This is like a lot of heavy infantry engagements, and they've kind of made changes to reflect that, like the short charge distance. You'll notice if you're a kind of a big Total War player that the infantry will just charge from very close range rather than just kind of jog over to engage. They will actually charge. You will initiate an actual charge from very close range, which makes a big difference in the actual outcome of battles and stuff. Critical hits.
Yeah, critical hits is it's pretty obvious what a critical hit is. There's a small percentage that a melee attack or a loose arrow can just do, well, pretty fatal.
10 times damage.
Yeah, it is officially 10 times. That's what Creative Assembly have said. It's not like we haven't just extrapolated that from nowhere.
We're not saying basically.
Yeah, it's to create those like epic arrow to the eye moments that you hear about in like Songs of Legend and stuff, where there's a straight they can just one hit kill people and stuff like that. Critical hits are now in there. I'm not sure if that can be increased through the melee skill attribute or anything like that. I'm not sure if there's any. I haven't seen anything that can boost critical hit chance. This isn't a fucking Dungeons and Dragons RPG.
It doesn't feel like it doesn't feel like a stat that you see. It's more like an under the hood stat. It just means that what it means is that the unit will still get depleted at the same kind of rate, but you'll see soldiers dropping earlier. You'll see like men just going down for like pretty quickly, rather than the unit having a total health bar that depletes over time, and then people start dropping.
Yeah, arrows
a bit more natural.
Are really effective on this because they've made the distance between melee units. The distance is now shorter because they've got shields, which is a huge part of this game, I guess. The shield play, the guard mode has made a return, and you've got, like you're saying, about the shield wall. Shields can charge, reflect. Shield's got its own stat now, so they've decreased the distance between units in infantry. So arrows seem to, if you don't have your shields up, arrows can just, there's chances of them hitting a lot higher. I guess there's been a lot of changes to cavalry as well, like the unit.
Well, they've gone the opposite way with that.
Yeah,
they've opened out the units so that you have like that Lord of the Rings kind of in the Return of the King kind of scene. You see the horses kind of fanning out and going into each other or into the enemy a bit more. They filter through. Yeah,
they weave between each other.
Exactly,
you can see cavalry charges where the opposing cavalry and your cavalry will they'll mesh, they'll merge rather than just. That noise was me slapping my hands together. I forgot that this is just audio.
That's got to be like the softest, campest recreation of a cavalry charge in history. Just a light clap.
Yeah, the pitter-patter of hooves. But cavalry seems to be a much requested change anyway, from what I saw. And it looks like they've took that on.
I feel like the charging stuff, charging cavalry is something they kind of get wrong quite a lot. Not wrong, but it's just not quite perfect at release, and they end up patching it and stuff a lot post-launch, but it feels good. It works this time. I think it works.
You into the battles, Gaz?
We're talking about specifically changes. I heard that the general now cannot be killed until 70% of this unit is depleted, and you talk about like critical hit chance. That doesn't apply to a general's unit. So like Battle of Hastings, what was it? King Harold got arrow to the eye. That can't happen until like 30% of your unit is dead essentially. So that gives you a little bit of
a buffer.
Yeah, buffer. So your general won't be killed just by the first charge into it or whatever. It gives you some stability there. At least.
You do need to use your generals, or they usually have the best, most elite units, and you'd be daft to just have them sitting in the back. Like you've got to be using them. So there is peril there. You do use them a lot.
Peril, lovely word.
Yeah.
No magic spells like in Warhammer. So the fact that they've got all this great
no dragons in that,
isn't there? Yeah. Other battle things, I noticed tiny changes, but I guess if you're this way through the video and you're a stickler for Total War details, the fact that you can default skirmish mode off is good.
Skirmish mode is a little bit bugged in the build that we're using pre-release, so they might patch it, but they seem to run away really quickly. Really easily, and it's just kind of a few things wrong with this.
I've had a couple of moments like that where I've got skirmish mode off, but my archers don't know that. There's also always run, little toggles, little dials, so
which you can do in game in the menu. In Total War games, when you press the space bar to highlight all your troops, it has always in all the games almost tanked the frame rate. I haven't noticed that as much this time. However, on the flip side, I haven't actually noticed the highlight thing that well either. So it seems to just highlight your own troops. So when you press spacebar, you don't get quite the same vivid, like this is the battle line, here's the yellow troops, here's the red troops, as you do in other games. But on the benefit of that is that the frame rate does not tank when you press spacebar.
So that's the battles. I found it pretty smooth as well. Hopefully that's been quite comprehensive. Any closing thoughts? Are you guys enjoying it? Yeah,
it was fantastic for me. I can see myself playing this game for ages because of how simplified they've made a lot of the taken away a lot of the niggles for me, and I can feel myself playing these campaigns a lot longer than I have done in the previous entries.
I think it's a good game. It's pretty enjoyable. It changes in positive and negative sense. They've taken things away and they've built things in.
Yeah.
It's probably it's a very different game to Warhammer, and it is a different game to Attila and Total War. It does feel like a game that it is at this price. Like it's like 25 quid, 30 quid.
Yeah, compared to like full price. Yeah, it's 27.
It does, and I think it's fair. That kind of price is fair for it. That's what I'll say. I think it's a great game so far for the price.
Yeah, I completely agree. I feel like a AA game price and you're getting a little bit more than a AA game. It's obviously leaner than Warhammer's offerings, especially if you're doing the Mortal Empires, but at that price you can't complain. At least that's what we seem to think here. So cheers Gaz, cheers Mike, and I hope you enjoyed watching. That's Total War Saga, Thrones of Britannia. It's out on Thursday, May the 3rd for about 25 quid or something like that. Nice one. Cheers very much for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye bye.